All right, today I want to take y'all inside the mind of a food addict. I myself am a reforming food addict. I think, like pretty much everything else, it starts with childhood. I think most of us understand the science or just the basic principles: calories in, calories out. You eat whole foods, you eat clean, eat high protein, exercise, you're going to lose weight. And yes, objectively, that is true. And that is how you lose weight. That's how I've lost over 120 pounds. But I don't think it's talked about enough. First of all, how people get to the weights that they get to, especially when you're talking about morbidly obese people, not just a little overweight, but also why that's so difficult to do because it is so simple. And so, yeah, I think for me, and I'm sure there are other food addicts out there. Yeah, I just think it comes from experiences and developing bad coping mechanisms and just not knowing how to handle your emotions. A big part of what led me to being a super anxious child was my parents would be constantly beefing, arguing about stuff. And I'm not talking about regular arguments. Well, actually, I can't say what's regular. I don't know what's going on in y'all households, but like most of the time, it was pretty chill. It was pretty calm. My dad was a truck driver, so he wasn't home like that often. Like he was home like 3, 4 days a week, but he wasn't like there a lot of the time. Like he wasn't home enough for them to be arguing like that for real. But when they did have arguments, it would be pretty damn explosive and like there was never any like physical violence or anything like that. But I'd be hearing them in there yelling, and I don't know why they think children are just complete idiots and they have no idea what was going on. I don't know if y'all parents were like this, but they thought that if they closed their door, then like it was just completely soundproof, bulletproof, like nothing left their door. So my room was literally right next to them on the other side of the wall. I heard every word. And I didn't understand all of it because a lot of it happened when I was really young. But actually, that's not true. It happened a lot when I was older too. But I understood that they were arguing and there was some conflict, there was some friction. I don't know exactly the details, but I just knew that mom and dad are mad at each other. A lot of the times that would lead to basically a threat of divorce, and my dad would get mad and he would leave. And then I had to play my favorite game I always like to play: Is dad coming home today? Yeah, so I was just really anxious about not knowing the state of my parents' relationship and not knowing if they were gonna continue to be together. They're still together to this day. I don't know how in on God's green earth they made it through that, but yeah, they're still together to this day. I don't know if that's for the best or not, but I mean they made it here. It's been 30 years actually. They'll be celebrating their 30-year anniversary in a couple months. So yeah, that led to me being a super anxious child and being one already fat kid. I literally there's pictures of me at 2, 3 years old. I'm already overweight, and that trend did not stop anytime soon. And so I already enjoyed food just naturally, just off the strength, off the cuff. Also, my family is probably also mostly addicted to food, especially on my dad's side, and that's who I was around for most of my childhood. So birthday parties, family celebrations, everything celebrated with food. And so I like food. Who doesn't like food? Like we all like eating, but I probably enjoyed eating, especially when it comes to sugary things. Like I could knock back half a cake, no problem. Like that's light. So yeah, I think there's probably some genetic slash natural component to it. But also, when I would be feeling anxious, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I would usually just eat to make myself feel better because I got the dopamine hit from the food, and that like comforted me in some way because I just had all these like confusing emotions and being anxious, and yeah, it was just a lot for me. So I would usually just end up eating, and that made me feel better even temporarily, and that was a way I could just, I guess, distract myself. And that started real early, probably like 7, 8 years old. And then fast forward to middle school, I always had a entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that came from my dad because he worked as a truck driver for 40 years, but he always had his little side hustles on the side. So in elementary school, I made spinners. I don't know if y'all remember those. You like fold the paper up. I don't even remember how to do it anymore, but it basically folded to like a point at the bottom was like a square, and then you like spin it. It was We were kids. It was dumb. We also played marbles. I was nice at marbles. I used to, I was taking all people because I think that's the way the game works. Like whoever was the winner, like they got to keep the other people's marbles. And so I had all the cheap shits that costed like $1, and people had more expensive marbles, like $5, $10 marbles. And I like worked my way up the food chain, and then I was stealing people's expensive marbles because I was nice, and then I would sell those extra marbles. It was a whole thing. So that was how I got the seed money to start my spinner business. So I learned how to make giant spinners, like with construction paper. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore, but it's just giant sheets of paper and they're different colors. And so I would make the big spinners out of construction paper with different colors. I would do green and black, black and red, whatever. Because I think half of the sheets were black, and then it would be like other colors. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but just mixing the colors with the construction paper, and I made giant spinners, and I would sell them for like a dollar fifty each. And the other kids was buying. I don't know where they got money. We were like 8 years old, 9 years old. I don't know how we had money, but we did. It wasn't much, obviously. It's like a couple bucks, so I guess that makes sense. But anyway, so yeah, I was doing that in elementary school, and then when it came to middle school, then that's when I got into the big business. I was selling chips and candy. My dad, he had a bunch of connects in downtown LA, and so we would have to go. He would take us like maybe once a month to downtown LA to this warehouse that you're supposed to have a vendor's license to get in, but he knew the owner, so he would let us in, and that's where all the stores buy their like candy and stuff from, like liquor stores, things like that. They go there. So we got the stuff for the low, and then I would take it to school and sell it there. And I had a friend that we were in business with together, and so like yeah, we I don't even know how we became friends. Oh, we actually became friends because we sat next to each other in the auditorium, I think in seventh grade, and like we just started talking. I think he was asking me about my chip selling business, and then I got him into it, and so yeah, we became business partners with the chips at least, and then he eventually started selling candy alongside me as well. And we didn't have any classes together, so there was no conflict of like him stealing my customers or anything like that because we just knew different people. So that worked out. It was cool. But I used the money, the two things. I was selling chips and candy. So I think y'all know where this is going. I was getting high on my own supply. The Snickers specifically, I would buy the big, I think it was either 24 or 48 bars. That was all mine. I did not sell a single one of those. The rest of everything else, all the other product, all the other chocolates, candies, I sold those and kept the profit for that. But the Snickers, that was me. So yeah, I was knocking back like 4 or 5 of those a day. It was it was insane looking back on it. But so there was that, and then the chips. They were pop chips. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar, but we used to get those mad cheap. My dad got those from work somehow. I don't know exactly the details behind that, but he would bring a few boxes home, and then we would sell those. And yeah, so I was selling chips and candy, getting high on my own supply, and then with the profits, I would sometimes go to the 99-cent store after school, and I would buy like whatever candy I wanted, or what I remember specifically I used to buy all the time was the grandma's cookies. They were 50 cents for the 2 pack, and I used to get like 2 or 3 packs at a time. Mostly the chocolate chips, sometimes the peanut butter if I wanted to be a little adventurous, you know what I'm saying? But so I think that really like solidified my addiction. And then I would also do other things like I would always be excited as hell for family celebrations. I had conflicting emotions actually. I would be like scared or like anxious because my parents would force me to go say hi to everybody and yeah, just talk and socialize with my family, and I didn't want to do that. But I would be excited at the same time because I knew everybody would either be in the front yard or the backyard, and that was pretty much the only time my parents would be out of the room or their room. And my dad, who's also a food addict, had a candy stash in their room. So whenever we had family events, I would, you know what I'm saying, I would scope out the situation after they forced me to say hi to all of my cousins and whatnot. I would make sure that my parents were distracted and they were yapping with somebody. So I had time to go back in the house, sneak into their room, and then steal as much candy as I could steal without it looking obvious that I took some. And then I would stash it under my pillow and I eat that later. And then after the family party, whatever desserts were left over, because my family, for whatever reason, they were never super big on sweets. Like my aunts and my grandma make great pies and cakes, but it was just never a thing where like they just never finished it. Like they would steal all the ribs, take those home, like whatever other actual food, burgers, whatever it was, they would take the food home. But the pies and cakes always got left at the host house, and my dad loved hosting parties. So yeah, I would chow down on that, whatever with leftover pies and cakes, and then the next day I had my candy stash that I stole from the day before, and I don't think my parents ever found out or ever saw me, but what I would do is after I'd finish all the candy, I would stuff all the wrappers and stuff under my bed. And then eventually, when it came time to clean, I would just take a trash bag in there, put all that at the bottom, and then whatever other trash I had in the room, like bottles, cans, whatever, I would put that on top so they never saw the candy and they didn't know. I don't know how they didn't like recognize that I was putting back an extra, I don't know how many thousand calories every week, but yeah, I don't know if they just thought that whatever with the amount that they were feeding me was enough to make me as big as I was, but yeah, so I was stealing candy from my parents basically. Hey man, I was an addict and I was like 12, 13 years old and I didn't know any better. So yeah, I had to come up with strategies. I had to come up with methods. I had to figure out how I was gonna get away with this. I was doing Snicker heists. You know what I'm saying? I do remember the rush that I used to get from like having a successful mission. Yeah, so I did that the majority of my childhood as well. And then when it came to high school, the high school that I went to was like, I guess technically attached to like a college campus. So it was like a giant hill that separated the college at the top from the high school I went to at the bottom. And so I had to take a bus, then a train, then another bus to get to and from school. And I did that freshman and sophomore year. And then junior and senior year, I had a friend that gave me a ride. Yeah, sometimes my aunt would drop me off at the train station. It was right next to a Burger King. And I would usually get some Burger King breakfast, French toast sticks, the breakfast sandwiches, a little platter, whatever. And then I would catch the train, then hit the other bus to get to school. Or after school, I would usually go to the I can't remember what the damn dining hall thing was called for the college campus, but it had like Subway in there, Panda Express, not Whataburger. Oh, A&W. There was Jamba Juice in there. I can't remember all of them, but yeah. So I would go there, get most of the time it was Subway, but I felt like I was being healthy, but I was getting like meatball subs and shit. It was not healthy at all. But that's how I fueled my addiction in high school. And then when I got to college, it was free reign. I was dorming, and yeah, nobody could say anything to me. I was spamming the Burger King nuggets. Those were, I think it was 10 for $1.50 or 10 for a dollar. It was crazy cheap. I was spamming those, the Taco Bell boxes. I was having a field day in college, and my roommate, he was on the college basketball team, so he would be at practice, he would be doing second workouts, he would be going to parties and stuff. He was never in the room, so I had free reign to just sit there and rot and eat whatever I wanted, and that's how I ended up ballooning to my heaviest, which was around 320 pounds at 19. So that's how I became a food addict. I just don't think a lot of people understand that a lot of the times it's not just like you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to start eating cheeseburgers every day. It usually starts from your childhood and not knowing how to cope with different emotions and using food to, I guess, lean on to make yourself feel better. I also got bullied a lot during my pretty much my entire childhood until high school is pretty much when the bullying stopped. And so food also made me feel better about that as well, and also made the problem worse because I got bullied for being fat and I made myself fatter. So obviously it doesn't make any logical sense, but when you're an 11-year-old and you just feel bad about yourself, you're gonna do whatever is easiest to make yourself feel better. So I say all that to say that I have spent the last basically 7 years of my life trying to overcome that addiction. And I do find it a bit frustrating at times when people make content basically just saying like people that are overweight are just fat and lazy and don't take into consideration all the factors that led to them being where they are. And I also think that like two things can be true. Like objectively getting lean or like losing weight can be simple but also be extremely difficult, and I don't think that that's acknowledged as much as it should be. And also I think food addiction or just being really overweight is like one of the only things where it's like extremely visible, like you see a physical manifestation of somebody's trauma basically. Maybe that's not the case for everybody, but at least for myself and the vast majority of people who I have talked to that have been extremely overweight in their lives, it's a similar story, similar sentiment. It comes from childhood trauma most of the time. So yeah, I just don't think that people are given enough grace from that aspect. And when advice is given online, most of the time they're talking about it from, I guess, an objective lens, saying like if you eat X amount of calories, do X amount of steps, and lift, and that's like the ideal recipe, which I think it's still valuable information. But I don't think that there's enough of the other side, the mental aspect, and how can you mentally rewire your brain to get to the point where you're able to actually do the things on a consistent basis that help you change your life. And so, yeah, I kind of just wanted to yap about that and just tell a bit, just talk, tell a little bit of my story. Hopefully, some of that was relatable to some, or actually, hopefully not, but I'm sure that at least some of that was relatable to some people. I don't want to say that to like excuse people from not trying to lose weight. I obviously am still actively trying, and I have done a lot of work to get to where I am, but I do think that I was even too hard on myself for the vast majority of my journey because I'm like, I'm not making progress fast enough. Why can't I stick to this? And just beating myself up over every failure, every time I went over my calorie limit. And that definitely wasn't helpful. And I think that people need to know that they should give themselves grace and acknowledge that they messed up. I think, yeah, I think more people should be aware that it's okay to give yourself grace. And even though you can acknowledge that you messed up or made a mistake, you don't need to beat yourself up about it. And also just looking at things from a perspective of taking it one step at a time. And for example, if you're saying, I'm going to go on a diet, and when you're usually eating straight BS 7 days a week, and you stick to that diet for 3 days, and then you fall off for a couple of days, and then you get back on it for the last day. So you dieted 4 days, you ate BS for 3 days. That's still an improvement from eating BS 7 days. And so you shouldn't look at that week as a failure because you messed up a few days. And sure, that's not going to get you probably where you want to be long term, but it's part of the process. You do that in the beginning and you gradually go from 4 days of eating BS, 3 days of eating right to 3 days of eating BS, and then so on until most of the time you eat right. Every once in a while, you'll eat some BS here or there, and that'll be enough for you to get at least close to where your goal is. And then you get better over time. Like even like my palate was so messed up that I literally didn't enjoy fruit. I like if I ate an orange or a strawberry, it wasn't tasty enough for me. That's how fried my whatever receptors, my taste buds, whatever you want to call it, my palate, that's how fried it was. So I just don't think that people who haven't been there understand that. And so I just wanted to give some perspective. All right, so that's pretty much how I became a food addict. And maybe I'll talk, maybe next time I'll make a video on, I guess, how I've overcome it or have come close to overcoming it. I don't have a 12 pack yet, but like I said, I lost like 120 pounds. So I think I've done something right. All right, that's enough yapping for now. See y'all next time.